First and foremost, we had our first presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Y'all. First of all, I watched this debate so you didn't have to, okay? One thing I realized watching this debate is why I never watched debates before, because that shit is boring. Listen, there were definitely some highlights, which we're going to talk about, but outside of some little highlights here and there, it's like the shit is it's a snooze fest. Now, I think part of the reason why it's a snooze fest for me is because I am very much, I stay on top of politics. So all of the things that these folks are talking about are usually things that they've been talking about, that they've been saying. And so it just kind of feels like they're just like repeating the same stuff over and over again. And so I guess, that's probably why I feel like I'm kind of like, okay, girl, we know about you, but not everybody else does. And so they do have to talk about these points and they do have to say these things over and over again because not everybody else has heard about it. But we're going to get into some of the highlights of this debate, the things that I thought really stuck out. First and foremost, if I was to describe this debate in 2 words, I would call it a flawless victory for Kamala Harris. I guess that's 4 words or 5 words. A flawless victory for Kamala Harris. Literally, baby girl went in there and did what the hell she was supposed to do. She went in there and handled BI. If I was to encapsulate it, I would say essentially she went in there, she did her job of communicating her goals and her plans for her presidency and for the American people. She communicated that effectively. That's the first thing you need to do when you're debating. Number 2, she called out all of Donald Trump's bullshit super effectively. And number 3, she baited the hell out of that motherfucker. And this dude took every single one of those baits, hook, line, and sinker, because he has no self-control, which we're going to talk about. So, yeah, I loved, some of these things that happened in the debate. I would say the first highlight, literally was them coming out on the debate stage. We saw the handshake heard around the world. For those of you who didn't see this, pull up the clip. I'm going to post it. For those of you who didn't see this, both of them come out, right? The debate stage is empty. They both come out and Kamala Harris, walks normal stride to the midway point, ready to greet Donald Trump. And instead of him meeting her at the midway point, he took his sweet ass time, power move, okay? Because that's all this motherfucker ever does is these weak ass power moves because he has no actual substance. So he saunters slowly over because he has no intention of actually shaking her hand. His plan is to go to the podium and he expects her to just go, oh, well, okay, and awkwardly head over to the podium. But Kamala Harris is that bitch, okay? Kamala Harris is a black woman. You are not going to intimidate a black woman. It's just not going to happen that way. And Kamala Harris is a freaking Libra, okay? One thing about a Libra, you're not going to treat us unfairly because we're going to make sure that you know what time it is. And that's exactly what the hell Kamala Harris did. So she waited for a brief millisecond. And when she realized that he wasn't making it over and he was taking his sweet time, she went over to him. She extended her hand and she said to him, Kamala Harris, and introduced herself. And you could see that it threw him off his game because he was not expecting that. He thought that he was going to pull his little power move as she was going to awkwardly saunter back to her podium. And then he was going to have that moment, that great viral moment. But that's not what happened. He got played, okay? He tried her and he got played. And it was so awkward. You could tell that he was like, let's have a good debate. That's what he said in response to her. And she shook his hand and she went right back to her podium and she got to work and commenced on tearing his ass to pieces. First and foremost, Kamala had incredible digs throughout the whole entire debate. This woman just she just one dig after another. One of my favorites was when she told the audience she said, I encourage you to go to a Donald Trump rally. I encourage you to go to a Donald Trump rally so you can see them for yourself. And she said, because they're very interesting. Already she's dragging you. They're very interesting. And she talks about like what goes on. And then she says that, and what you'll notice is that towards the end, you'll notice that people start leaving the Trump rallies early. You'll notice they start leaving these Trump rallies early because they're exhausted and they're tired of listening to this man. And of course, you know Trump, you know baby Trump, toddler Trump. You know you can't talk about his crowd sizes. You know he's not going to handle that well. And instead of being the mature adult and just ignoring that, he's like, first of all, you want to talk about crowd sizes? If you go to Kamala's crowds, she's bussing those crowds in. They're not even real crowds. She has to bust them in and pay them, which we know is freaking bullshit. So she dragged him on that. At one point, she told him that President Putin of Russia would eat him for lunch. Those were the moments where I was like, okay, this is a little interesting. She said that President Putin would eat Donald Trump for lunch. And you know he didn't like that. You could see his reactions throughout the whole entire debate. You can always see whenever she hit him in a sore spot, because he would always do this thing. The eye roll up. You know, the for those who can see, if you're just listening, you know what I'm talking about. That annoying eye roll where he looks up because he can't accept the truth. She also called him out on the fact that he is still saying that the 2020 election was stolen. She said to him, you know, we realize that you're having a hard time processing the fact that the 2020 election was stolen. She dragged his ass to filth, and he had nothing back to her. He could do nothing. He could say nothing except for defend himself and take every single one of these stupid baits, hook, line, and sinker. And I loved that for her. I mean, those were the highlight moments, because she thrashed and trashed him in those moments, and it was excellent to watch. One other interesting part of this debate that I noticed was the fact that, you know, Trump refused to take a stand on abortion.